Prepare to stare, unveiling the shadows of fear on Fear Files.
Tracy was struggling to make ends meet, trying to make a name for herself in the art world. And then one day, out of the blue, this mysterious stranger walks into her studio. He had a glass eye and walked with a cane, his presence sending shivers down Tracy's spine. But despite her reservations, she couldn't turn down the opportunity he offered. The stranger commissioned Tracy to paint his portrait, promising to pay handsomely for her services. Tracy hesitated at first, but the lure of money and fame was too strong to resist. She agreed to take on the project, determined to prove herself as an artist. But as she worked on the portrait, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The stranger would sit for hours on end, never once moving or speaking, his glass eye fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. And every time she glanced at him, she swore she saw a sinister glint in his eye. Despite her unease, Tracy poured her heart and soul into the painting, determined to make it her masterpiece. And when it was finally finished, she stepped back to admire her work, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. But that's when things took a terrifying turn. As Tracy turned to show the portrait to the stranger, she felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was like her body was turning to stone, her limbs growing heavy and stiff. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. And then, before she knew it, she was frozen in place, trapped in her own body like a statue. The stranger chuckled, his glass eye gleaming with malice as he stepped forward to examine the portrait. He praised Tracy for her skill, admiring the lifelike details she had captured. But as he turned to leave, he glanced back at Tracy with a wicked grin, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. And just like that, he was gone, leaving Tracy trapped in her own personal hell. To this day, she remains frozen in stone, a grim reminder of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. And as for the portrait, it hangs in a dark corner of the studio, a haunting reminder of the price Tracy paid for her art. Lily had fallen asleep like any other night, but when she woke up, she found herself lying on a stone-cold table in a dimly lit room. The air was thick with the smell of incense, and all around her she could hear the sound of chanting. It was like something out of a nightmare. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, Lily saw that she was surrounded by people wearing black and white masks. They were chanting in a language she couldn't understand, their voices echoing off the walls like a sinister melody. And in their hands, they carried carved knives glinting in the flickering candlelight. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she realized she was in serious danger. She tried to move, to scream for help, but she found herself paralyzed with fear. She was trapped at the mercy of these masked figures who seemed intent on doing her harm. As the chanting grew louder, the figures began to lean forward, their knives raised high above their heads. Lily's mind raced with thoughts of escape, but she knew she was outnumbered and outmatched. All she could do was pray for someone to come to her rescue. And then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the door burst open and a blinding light flooded the room. It was the police, responding to a tip from a concerned neighbor who had heard strange noises coming from the abandoned warehouse where Lily was being held captive. The masked figures scattered like cockroaches, disappearing into the shadows before the police could catch them. But Lily didn't care about them. All she cared about was the fact that she was safe, that she was going to make it out of this nightmare alive. But even as she was rescued from the clutches of the masked cult, Lily couldn't shake the feeling of dread that lingered in the air. Who were those people? What were they planning to do to her? And most importantly, would they come back for her now that they knew she had escaped? It was a chilling reminder that evil lurks in the darkest corners of the world, waiting to strike when you least expect it. And And as Lily lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by loved ones who had come to her rescue, she knew that she would never forget the terror she had experienced at the hands of the masked cult. What started out as a night of fun quickly turned into a nightmare they would never forget. The group, let's call them Jake, Sarah, Matt, and Emily, they were hanging out at Jake's house one night, looking for something to do. They had all known each other for years, and they loved nothing more than spending time together, laughing and joking around. As the night wore on and the drinks started flowing, someone suggested they play a game of truth or dare. It seemed like a harmless way to pass the time, a chance to get to know each other better, and maybe even have a little fun in the process. But then, just as they were getting into the game, something strange happened. All the lights in the house suddenly went out, plunging them into darkness. At first, they laughed it off, thinking it was just a power outage or something. But as they sat in the darkness, waiting for the lights to come back on, they heard a sound that sent shivers down their spines. It was a sharp, metallic sound, like a knife being unsheathed. Before they knew it, the lights flickered back on, revealing a scene straight out of a horror movie. One of their friends, Matt, lay motionless on the floor, a pool of blood spreading out around him. His eyes were wide with terror, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. Standing over him, holding a bloodied knife in his hand, was one of their own. The group recoiled in horror, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. How could one of their friends have done something like this? It was like a nightmare come to life, a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife ever could. But as they stared in disbelief at the scene before them, they realized that their friend wasn't alone. There was someone else in the room with them, someone who had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In those 10 seconds of darkness, while they were blinded by the absence of light, their friend had been killed in cold blood. And now, they were trapped in a house with a killer on the loose, their lives hanging in the balance. It was a night of terror they would never forget, a reminder that even the most innocent of games can turn deadly in an instant. And as they huddled together in fear, waiting for help to arrive, they knew that their lives would never be the same again. Thank you for braving the unknown with us. Until next time, stay haunted.